Today, we're talking about my biggest sales up. I'm going to tell you the story of what happened, and I'm going to tell you the story of how you can avoid it at your startup. Long before I was an executive coach, I found myself as the first sales manager at a startup called Adroll. Adroll had an amazing trajectory. I joined at about 10K MRR. I left, we were doing $750,000 a day. Somewhere in the middle there, we were named Inc. magazine's fastest growing advertising company, and we were on a tear. When you experience that kind of success, the biggest question that the founders, the board, and the team is going to ask is, how do you do more? And how do we keep it up? The answer that had come to us was opening an outsourced sales development team. We set up 2 teams through a consultant in Utah, outsourced team 1 for sales development, outsourced team 2 for SMB sales. I was in charge of sales development, and this is where it all went wrong. I had thought the beauty of outsourcing was I wouldn't have to do some of the management tasks that were bogging me down back in San Francisco. Learning people's names, doing trainings and one-on-ones. That's what I was trying to avoid. That was the point of outsourcing. Find people that are trained by somebody else that can do the job well, and we can continue to scale without missing a beat. So I took a disastrous approach. I decided that I didn't want to get to know anyone on the team. I gave all the training materials to the manager and I said, this is your role, you're going to do it, let's go. In fact, if I had to admit it, I was a little annoyed that the reps were adding me on LinkedIn. And the metaphor that stuck out to me at the time was, I don't want to name the lobsters in the tank because then I can't eat them. The beauty of outsource is we can hire 5 and fire whoever doesn't work out. I was really cold and cut and dry in the way that I approached this. And it was the biggest mistake possible. By not spending time doing the right kind of training, I wasn't actually creating an A/B test from my internal team and my outside outsourced team. My internal team, they were getting tons of support. They were sitting next to the account executives. They were getting mentorship. They were getting great training. But for the outsourced team, it was really do the best you can. That's not a true A/B test. That doesn't give us the chance to see this team versus that team to see where we're going to find the efficiency and the scale. We knew we were going to save some money with outsource, but I limited the experiment to just that one factor, where what I could have been learning is, do we need the same training? Is the training efficient? In the end, it was too little and too late. While that outsourced team started to do well by not getting to know them, not doing training, not spending time making sure they were getting the right supervision, I was setting them up to fail, and fail they did. It's actually, if I had to look back and give a compliment, it was that they were pretty productive given how hard I'd made it for that team. Now you may be thinking outsource could be a great option for you, and maybe it is, maybe it's not. But choosing an outsourced team just based on the cost was the wrong way to think about it. We set up the experiment to run for about 3 months, but we ended up cutting it short at just a little over a month and a half. The reason for that was we weren't getting the productivity that we were expected, and we saw that apples to apples, when we compared the team that was outsourced to the team internally, the real benefit was our internal team was going to learn the SDR motion and they get promoted to account executive. Our numbers were much better on an account executive team based in San Francisco, and so we ended up hiring there, not firing the SDR team. That outsourced SDR team actually moved into the SMB team, which is my second point of the story. The manager who's running our outsourced SMB team did the exact opposite as I did. He flew out there, he gave custom training, he took t-shirts with him, he put pinups in the office for best employee to do this, best employee doing that. He ran contests, he gave prizes, he took everybody to dinner, he spent a little bit of budget on that, and he got phenomenal returns. In fact, many years later, they were still running a 100-person team from that 5-person experiment that Aaron did at the same time I did. Amazing results. And that SMB team ended up being the heart of what Adroll offered, which was the ability for anyone to run this type of advertising without the restrictions of minimums and contracts. So now let's get to the point of what you can do to avoid this. It's not as simple as the lesson here is just spend more time and train your team, whether they're outsourced or not. I think there's a little bit more here. All right, so let's dig in. Lesson number 1. When you set up your sales team, regardless of whether they're working for you in the office, they're remote but working directly for you, or they're contractors or an outsourced team, the number one thing is that we're really clear on what the outcomes are we're looking for. Before we ever hire somebody, we figure out what would be a very productive team. What team pays for itself? How many deals do we need? How many conversations does it take to get a deal? And a lot of that work you're going to do as the founding team. You're going to do the first calls, you're going to figure out how they convert, and you're going to really build that sales math before we ever post a job. Lesson 2, set up the team for success. Founders are even more susceptible than I was to just throwing some people at it and seeing what happens. Because oftentimes we say, well, if you can sell, you'll be fine. And we rely on that. And if we're relying on our new salespeople to pull their weight, but we're not giving them training, we're also not setting them up for the best possible experiment. Remember, if we set up our team for the best possible experiment, then we're actually reaping the rewards of revenue. Because when we get it right, we want to be able to double down on it. Step 1 is getting it right. And you don't want to limit yourself and limit that team as the experiment. Because in the end, the experiment will be, could people succeed without great training, as opposed to what is the best way for us to get the most revenue for the effort that we put in. Ultimately, we want to be 2 to 3 times cost of sales for these initial sales experiments, and we want to be a really short payback time on any experiment or any sales team we spin up. It'd be great to be at a month. It'll probably be 3 to 6 months depending on what you sell and what those deals are worth. Lesson 3 is build that team in a sustainable way. If the team is successful and they got 10 deals, but your average deal is $5,000, does $50K move the needle for you? It may or it may not, depending on your business, depending on where your team is, depending on this whole outsource or working for you directly. All those questions will start to unfold when you stay close to what is that sales efficiency number that you're looking for. We're not talking about going public tomorrow. We're talking about how to put together a productive sales team. Again, 2 to 3 times cost of sales coming in from revenue. What does that look like? What support will they need? Maybe this contract team also needs sales development, or also needs a specific marketing program, or also needs the ability to travel for conferences. Set them up for success and you will increase your chances of success. So there you have it. My biggest sales up was setting up an experiment for absolute failure, and I wouldn't even wish that on an enemy. If you thought this was helpful, share this with a friend who you think needs to hear it, and I'll see you in the next one.